This is Transistor.fm.
Hey, did you know that Kyle Fox, my co-host, has his own software-as-a-service product? He does. It's called Photojournal, and this week we talk about how he built it and the lessons he learned along the way. But before we get started, I'd like to tell you about Sprintly. At my day job, we've switched to Sprintly, and I've got to tell you, it has really simplified our development process. Now, everyone on the team has a simple view of what's going on in development. On one screen, we can see what's in the backlog, what people are currently working on, and what's been completed and is ready for testing. I'd like you to go and try Sprintly out for free. You can sign up for a 30-day trial at www.sprint.ly. Hey everybody, this is Product People, a podcast focused on great products and the people who make them. My name is Justin Jackson, and my co-host is Kyle Fox.
Hello everybody.
Hey Kyle. So Kyle, this week we thought we would do something different. We've been interviewing other folks who have created their own products, but the fact is you have your own product that you run on the side. And in addition to being, a podcast co-host and working as a product manager during the day, you have this SaaS business that you've built on the side. And I thought it would be interesting to interview you in a sense and kind of delve into what it is, how you built it, and maybe also talk about motivation. What should motivate us to build a product in the first place?
Yeah. Sure.
So what is this? What's your product called, and what does it do?
Okay, so the product is called Photojournal. It's photo with an F, and the domain is myphotojournal.com. So I think lesson number one would be like, get some of that stuff right off the bat, because shortly after we launched, my wife was like, she's obviously heard about Photojournal a lot while we were building it and everything. And then I was like, hey, we actually launched it. And she wanted to go check it out. And she's like, she types it into the browser and she's like, it's not coming up. And I looked and she had gone to journal.ca. And I was like, okay, first of all, it's actually my Photojournal. It's photo with an F and it's .com. So like, you really want to nail that part down.
Oh man, that's interesting. So anyway, you went to the Canadian domain.
I know.
And photojournal.ca is taken.
Yeah, it's.
Oh my goodness.
Kind of bizarre.
How bad is it when the domain trolls are taking photojournal.ca and holding
exactly.
They got the Canadian one.
Yeah. So that's a quick tip for everyone out there.
So it's myphotojournal.com. Okay.
And photo is with an F. Mm-hmm. And what it is in a nutshell, it's a hosted blogging platform and community for professional photographers. So a professional photographer, when they want to start a blog, you've got these standard options, like you can go to WordPress.com or Blogger or Tumblr, or you can come to Photojournal. So it's kind of like fits in there, but it's focused. It's focused primarily on professional photographers who, are using blogging as a way to acquire clients and kind of get themselves known in the photography community, versus like there's a lot of portfolio sites out there, but portfolios they're fairly static and they're not they're not a great way. Some are, I guess, it depends on the portfolio, but they're not a great way to convey the photographer's personality. And a lot of the reason people hire a particular photographer over another photographer is because of the personality, because a large part of what results in a quality photo shoot and quality photos is how comfortable the subjects feel during the photo shoot, and that's largely influenced by the photographer's personality.
Mm-hmm,
So personality is a huge component when you're picking a wedding photographer, an engagement photographer, that kind of thing. So
yeah. Well, so you've gone into, now that you've brought it up, you've gone into why someone would hire an individual photographer. Why would a photographer hire Photojournal for their website?
Well, mostly because I'm a really nice guy, and like it's got pink on the website. I don't know. No, that's a good question. Well, there's lots of different options out there. WordPress is by and large the de facto blogging platform out there, but for like guys like us we're fairly web savvy. It's not that difficult to buy a shared host account, do a one-click install of WordPress, and maybe find a theme, connect through FTP, upload the theme, tweak it a little bit through the WordPress interface, set up a domain. All that kind of stuff is not insurmountable. But to a lot of like people who spend their time out and about on photo shoots and editing photos, like they're busy running their photography business. And I don't know about you, but in my experience, people who kind of jump on the WordPress train eventually end up becoming system administrators.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're worried about like, how do I back up my database? What does that even mean? How do I hook up my domain? How, like my blog got hacked. What do I do? My blog is slow. It's not loading. There's like a ton of things that, actually Squarespace has a great thing on their pricing page where it says, I think the question is like, why isn't Squarespace free? And they kind of go into, obviously, like, if you read between the lines, it's the same question I get asked a lot is, WordPress is free. How can you compete with a free product? And I'm sure Squarespace gets the same thing a lot. And Squarespace's response is like one of those things that I wish I had come up with because it's just so spot on. And they say, no solution is truly free because your time isn't free. And I think that pretty much hits the nail on the head of why somebody would use Photojournal. You can sign up and have a blog ready to go in 30 seconds, and it's smoking fast. You don't have to worry about getting hacked or backing up your database or buying hosting. And we're pretty like helpful with setting up the custom domains and things like that. Like that can be that's probably the only I guess technical hurdle that most of our users have to overcome is setting up a domain, because obviously they need to go register it and set up the records and things like that. But we're pretty like I've logged into people's registrar accounts and set it up for them so that they don't have to do it. So it's a pretty low friction solution to get a professional looking website and blog set up with little effort, and then it takes pretty much zero effort to continue running.
So it sounds like if I'm a photographer, I'm hiring you to save me time and to give me peace of mind.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's kind of like your website and blog is one less thing that you need to worry about. Like to the point where you pretty much don't even have to worry about it at all. Like even if you're on WordPress, it's not like you're going to spend all your time managing your WordPress blog, but it is still something that you've, in your to-do list every month, you should be like backing it up or updating it, running WordPress up. Man. So I just actually a few months ago built a custom WordPress site for some friends, and I've been kind of doing the maintenance, and man, it's a lot of work. Like making sure the backups are running, testing the backups, doing all the WordPress updates, making sure all the plugins are up to date, making sure there's no conflicts with the plugins. Like And I'm pretty web savvy. And for me, I'm like, I dread doing it because it's a lot of work to make sure everything is up to date and not breaking and that there's no plugin conflicts and things like that. So even if you are web savvy, and on top of it, it's still a lot of work to maintain a WordPress site. And I don't mean to just pick on WordPress. Like even if you were using like another hosted, self-hosted CMS, you'd encounter the same sort of thing. So with PhotoJournal, it pretty much completely eliminates that from your cognitive load. You don't have to worry about that stuff at all. You can just kind of focus on the photography side of your business.
That's right. This brings up two things in my head. The first is this idea that Jason Fried just brought out on the 37 Signals blog, which was we always talk about what people can do once they sign up for your product. But he was saying, what can people stop doing when they sign up for your product? So if before they were like spending time, worried about, upgrading plugins and, protecting themselves from being hacked and figuring out how to back up their WordPress site. And some of those things are just things that they actually aren't doing. They're just worrying about them. They're just sitting up and, late at night going, oh man, like I always think about how do I back up my WordPress blog, but I don't know how to do that.
Exactly. And like there's even a hurdle before you get to that point where like again, I'm pretty web savvy, and every time I need to set up a small little website for somebody or whatever, and I need to kind of look at all the different shared hosting options, like that's overwhelming. Like if you want to try finding a shared host, it's like, well, I could use DreamHost, but like they've had a lot of downtime, and like there's these problems, and this other one is kind of expensive, and this one looks good, but like it's a really I mean, not to paint everyone with the same brush, but I feel like it's an industry where creating confusion in consumers is almost like the way that they do their business.
Yeah.
And so like, you can imagine somebody who doesn't know the first step about like, how do I get a domain? How do I get my .com name? Like they don't even really know, first of all, that what hosting is, let alone which of the thousands of web hosts to choose from.
Mm-hmm.
So even like that first hurdle is kind of eliminated by, like presenting, hey, it's built for you. Like you just have to click a few buttons, and like you don't even have to think about hosting.
Mm-hmm. Now here's another question. How many of your customers do you think are hiring you just for support?
I don't know. That's an interesting question.
This comes from something that Addy at WooTheme said. And he said that the thing that a lot of people who are starting SaaS businesses don't realize is that a lot of your customers are actually, sure, they're paying you for the software, but what they're really paying you for is they want support. They want to be able to email someone and get an answer, or they want to be able to call someone and get an answer. And you had just mentioned, you've even gone in and set up people's custom domain names. So maybe just talk a little bit about support. How important do you think that is, or has it been for you anyway, in building PhotoJournal?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, it's well, first of all, like support is like critical. We've had like a lot of positive responses just from like how like kind of proactively and overly helpful and quick we are to respond. And so like people have our customer base is fairly small and like relatively small, I should say, but we've got kind of a reputation for being like really good and really quick with our support. And there's been like a lot of cases where you can take maybe a customer who's like dissatisfied for whatever reason and turn that around into a really positive experience for them. So I'm pretty like personally committed to customer support. Like I think it's a pretty important component of any like especially SaaS businesses. But I think it plays a huge part because our audience, like I sort of just described, is primarily the people who don't really know what they need to do. And so they'll sign up for photojournal, and like our support volume isn't super high. Like it's not like we get crushed with people asking us a lot of basic questions. But
how many support emails do you get in a day or a week?
In a week, I'd say maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5. And usually most of them are like, they're 90% the same things, which we've created articles for on our knowledge base. So I'll kind of respond and usually include the link to whatever article is relevant. And if there's something else that I can tell from their question the article doesn't cover, I'll include that, or I'll ask if they have any other questions and things like that. So overall, it's pretty. I like the product itself is pretty stable. So like, there's not a lot of bug reports or problems like that. Like it's mostly just people, honestly, like probably over half of the support requests are, I need help setting up my custom domain.
Yeah.
Which exactly like you said, like they're kind of hiring you for support, and it's actually a good thing because like someone will sign up, they don't really know. They're kind of like, okay, I've got this thing now, like what do I do with it, sort of.
Yeah.
Because the barrier to entry is so low. And then it's actually really, really awesome because we have an opportunity to educate them and say like, well, here's how you should use your blog. Like you should use it to post this kind of stuff, and here's how you should promote yourself, and here's how you set up a domain, and here's how you do all these things. And suddenly, like, we're kind of like seen as the experts.
That's right.
There's this really trusting relationship where, like, oh, these like photojournal guys, they totally helped me set up my whole website, and they told me how like I can promote my blog on Twitter, and like helped me figure out all these different things. And so it's a pretty low touch consultancy almost that keeps them using photojournal and keeps them happy with it.
Yeah, but that's fairly high touch in some ways, in terms of, I think what some people feel is that they're going to flip the switch on this app, and that money just comes in and all they do is work on the code and the design. And a lot of people miss that actually a big part of what people are paying you for is support. Like they want to be able to ask you a question and get an answer.
Yeah, and like that's why it's important to streamline your support system. So like we use an app called Tender, and it's okay. I don't love it, but it does the job. It's basically like a private forum. People can submit tickets, and we can link it to their photojournal account and stuff like that. But if something comes up more than a couple times, we'll put it in the knowledge base, and that way, at the very least, then we can link to it. We can link to it within the app and kind of preempt. You can preempt a lot of the common questions, but it's definitely not just a SaaS business is not a set it and forget it type model. But I think that's a good thing because we learn a lot by talking with our customers and seeing like the problems that keep coming up, or not even problems, but questions. And there's a huge opportunity to educate. I don't know why this is, but kind of the photography industry as a whole is a little bit behind on a lot of web stuff. And so there's like a huge opportunity to educate customers on how to effectively use your blog. Like stuffing keywords into the tag field isn't helping anything. But because of all this background with like the way that they've approached the web all these years, that's kind of ingrained as like, oh, there's a tag field. I should put every possible keyword combination in there. And so
Yeah.
when they reach out to you, you can say like, well, no, actually a better strategy is to like the tags are there to help your visitors navigate your blog and dive deeper into the parts of your blog that they like. And what you should focus your effort on is writing content that they'll want to read and share with other people. So when they kind of reach out to you, it's a good opportunity to educate them. And because of like photojournal is sort of built to be kind of, I mean, a little bit sensationalist to say, but it's trying to be the perfect tool for photography blogs.
Yeah.
As we educate users on the proper ways to blog and use it for their photography business, photojournal suddenly it becomes more and more looking like the perfect tool to do all these things.
Mm-hmm.
So even though it is, I guess, it's high touch in the sense that you do have to occasionally talk to customers and help them out. I think it's overall a good thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's kind of circle back here and start from the beginning. What's the story behind photojournal? Why did you decide to build it in the first place?
Well, so I've kind of always wanted to, I guess, like, let's go back to where I was. I was, at the time, I think I was still in college. So this would have been, or shortly out of college. So this would have been about 2007 or 2008. And I was, like, I've always kind of wanted to run my own business. And that was shortly around the time that Rails had started coming out, and this new shiny new thing, Basecamp, was sort of starting to gain attention because it was just built by some guys who, they built it themselves and put it out there and started charging money. And like my love has always been like building things, and so I was like, oh, this is awesome! I can just I can build something and put it out there and charge money for it and become wildly rich and wealthy. And that's how it's turned out. Yeah. So anyway,
story.
Yeah, exactly. That's it in a nutshell, basically. But no, I was kind of like, okay, this is an interesting way to create a business where I'm not doing like service, consulting work, but I can still get to do the things that I like to do. And so I was kind of like, I was looking for something to do that fit that model. And I kind of toyed around with a few different things. So like most of these never really got past the idea stage. But,
tell me, what did you toy around with?
So one of the first things I wanted to do was an online invoicing tool.
Yeah.
Which it was actually kind of funny because there was some, I'm trying to remember what the name of the program was. There's some kind of mentorship program here in Edmonton that there's like one night a week for a month that you'd go and you'd basically like people would show you how to make business plans and that sort of thing. And
okay, yeah. So
I went to that, and like the whole idea was to build this invoicing tool, and it and I was like, I wasn't 100% sure if people would use online invoicing, and like at the time there really wasn't a lot of options out there, and I don't know if it was. I don't know how long FreshBooks has been around, but it was around that time that I saw FreshBooks, and it was pretty new. And I think there's another one too. I can't remember the name of it. I want to say Blink Sale, maybe.
Okay.
Let me Google that quickly, actually. Yeah, Blink Sale. As I started like looking into building this kind of a product, I was like, okay, there's a couple options out there. And me being like, I don't know, kind of naive and maybe lacking in self-confidence, I was like, oh, you know what? Somebody's already built an online invoicing tool. Like, I can't do it now, sort of
That's
thing.
right.
which now my opinion has totally like flipped.
Yeah.
You know, like people like, if there's a lot of people in a space, it's usually because there's a lot of opportunity there, and even if you just do something a little bit different, like you have a little bit different take on it, your value proposition is different, you can succeed in a crowded space. I think actually Amy Hoy tweeted the other day something about the whole idea of saturated markets being bullshit.
Yeah.
Which I totally agree with. But in any case, that's sort of what dissuaded me from actually building out the invoicing app. Which,
Okay.
Looking back on it, I kind of wish maybe I had actually stuck with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was one of the first things.
So how did you get Photojournal? What was the genesis of that idea?
So yeah, again, there's a few more other ideas that I kind of thought about, talked to a few people about. Some were kind of like, I wasn't totally in love with any of them. And then at the time, I was working for a company in town here called Lift Interactive, and we had been working on a product that let photographers build an online portfolio. So it was pretty basic, but yeah, it was like, photographers could sign up, upload their photos, organize them, and have an online portfolio. So I started to, I guess, so like not only did I build that product while I was there, but I did all the support.
Okay.
So I started to, I guess, kind of get to know, like, photographers are interesting people. Like they've, again, you don't want to paint everyone with the same brush, but there is kind of like an overall photographer personality.
Okay.
And they're
like
cool
creative.
people. Yeah, they're creative. They're pretty like laid back, and they're just like I really enjoyed, like, it was kind of I had done tech support in the past for other companies, and I mean I didn't hate it, but there's certainly like bad days where someone like yell at you, or it just wasn't always like awesome. But
yeah, pretty
much every encounter I had talking with the product was called Parade, and it's still available at getparade.com.
Okay.
But pretty much every interaction I had with Parade customers was awesome. So, so it's like, okay, these are cool people, and like, being like I consider myself fairly creative. The other side of the coin was, well, we're getting to like build these like beautiful photography-based websites. So it was kind of an interesting space. And then I started to get to know a couple of photographers here in town through another friend of mine, and they needed a blog. They were like pretty big into blogging, but they wanted to do a few other spin-off blogs, but they didn't really want to use WordPress. They didn't want to use some of the existing options. So they kind of came to us, to me and my friend John. So he was the guy that I co-founded Photojournal with. They kind of came to me and John and
what's John's last name?
John Smelquist.
Smelquist.
Yeah.
Okay.
So our friends are Rob and Lauren. They came to us to build them a blog, and while working at Lyft and working on Parade, we had people ask about like blogging functionality. And in the first version of the product, it was there, but it was pretty crude and like pretty bad, and nobody used it, which we incorrectly attributed to people didn't want photography blogs. But like looking back on it, I think the problem was just our implementation was like really bad, and nobody wanted to use it because it was bad. It was literally tacked on as an afterthought. Yeah. So in the meantime, we had other people asking for a better blog. And so when this opportunity to build a custom blog, photography blog for Rob and Lauren came up, we were like, why don't we make it into something that any photographer can sign up and use? And so obviously there was a little bit of like a potential conflict of interest with my day job at the time, because we were building, online portfolios, and I was going to be trying to build photography blogs.
Yeah.
But
How'd you deal with that?
well, Micah, he's the principal of Lyft Interactive. Him and his wife Christy run it, and they're super cool people, and they're pretty like. I mean, Parade was kind of like a side thing. It wasn't Lyft's bread and butter. Lyft's primarily an agency, so so they didn't have a ton of. They weren't relying a ton on Parade. So it wasn't a huge deal for me to have something in a similar space, I guess.
Yeah.
And we originally talked to them about even partnering on it, and originally that was going to be the case.
Okay.
But they kind of decided that was getting to be just too many things for them to handle, like a photography blogging business, a portfolio business, and then also trying to, like, the agency at the time was really small. It was like, I think 3 or 4 people.
Okay.
So they really wanted to focus on the agency side of things. And so they kind of bowed out and I guess gave us their blessing to continue on with Photojournal.
Okay.
So
you and John decided to build it together?
Yeah, exactly.
Huh. Could you quickly talk about, like, what legal work did you and John do? Did you guys sign anything? Did you, did you open did you start a corporation? Did you open a joint bank account? Did you just shake hands?
Yeah. So we, like, John and I had been friends for a while in college, and like he was, we're very similar in that, like, he loves building stuff. And he's, got an entrepreneurial side as well. So while we were in college, we just registered a partnership just at, like, the registry's office. For all our American listeners, that's roughly the equivalent of the DMV, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah.
But so we just went in there, and it's like, actually, you know what we did? I was talking to my mom one day, and I was like, I don't know, like, how to do this. And my family has, like, has had a few businesses in the past, and so my mom, she's an awesome, like, administrator, and so she's like, well, let me look into it. And like 2 days later, she sent me this package, and it was like, she had, like, basically summarized the difference between partnerships and corporations and all these different things.
Yeah.
And she talked about the different paperwork you need for each, and, like, in which scenarios you would choose which over which. And then she was like, you guys should do this. So my mom was, like, super helpful in starting through some of that.
Yeah.
So anyway, what me and John did was, while we were still in college, we started a partnership, just simple partnership. I think it cost $60 to register, and we started doing consulting work. This was before Photojournal came along.
Okay.
And so we had a joint bank account, and, like, we were running this small consulting business together. And then when Photojournal came along, we knew we were going to have to incorporate it at some point, but we kind of deferred that until the last possible moment. So we continued to develop it as part of our partnership. And then, like, a month or 2 before we launched it, we actually incorporated.
Gotcha. Huh.
And we just did that online through staples.ca, and I think it was like $600 or something like that. But
yeah,
so
interesting. Okay, so you and John decided to build this product, and talk about your motivation. Like, what was the primary motivation behind wanting to launch this business?
Well, I think at the time, I would say I was fairly naive about running a web business. Like, I had done some freelance work, but I didn't really know. I mean, I guess, SaaS wasn't brand new, but it was fairly new, and there certainly wasn't, I guess, like the amount of resources now that are available. Plus, I was younger and just dumber, so the motivation was really to, like, let's build something that's going to be fun to work on, that's going to help our friends, and that, maybe we can grow into a business where, it's just me and John going, like, maybe one day we'll have an office and it's just the two of us, like, hacking on photojournal. And we called that the dream.
Yeah.
And so we're like, if, like, I don't know, photojournal would go down or something, we'd always just say, like, the dream. And I think he came up with this. He came up with a slogan that he would drop every once in a while, and it's like so cheesy, but it was hilarious and awesome. It was teamwork makes the dream work. So, so that was like the unofficial, like, slogan of photojournal behind.
That's what kept you guys going.
Exactly, through the tough times. So the next question: how long did it take? I want to say it probably took, I would say, from idea to launch, probably took maybe a year and a half. And that went, like, that included, we actually built, this was kind of before the whole, like, idea of being lean or whatever, but we kind of, I guess you could say, pivoted a few times in there. Like, we sort of built a first version for our friends, Rob and Lauren, who needed it for their blog. Mm-hmm. And we used that to, like, launch their blog on. But we weren't happy with, like, some of the way the tech worked and just how the overall system was architected. We had really, like, gone overly ambitious with trying to modularize all the different pieces. And because we were like, oh, well, this is software engineering. We're doing a good thing by, like, breaking things up. But it ended up being really difficult to roll out changes and things like that. So, we had, like, different parts of the app lived in different source code repositories, and, like, it was really difficult to work on. Huh. So we're like, you know what, this is, like, we've got one blog on here, and making changes is already painful because of, like, the way it's set up. So we pretty much, like, we looked at, like, well, do we refactor it or what do we do? And we ended up just deciding to rebuild it. So we basically rebuilt it and ported their blog over to the new platform. So that added some of the time. And then the other thing too that, like, again, speaking to our naivety, and especially mine and my I guess sense of perfectionism. My feeling was that, like, when we launched, this thing had to be polished and it had to be, like, awesome. There couldn't be any bugs in it. It had to, like, it had to be flawless at launch, which, extended the development time a lot. Mm-hmm. Like, now looking back, that's the one thing that I would, like, out of all the things that I could do differently, if I could do it again, that would be the first thing, is, like, get something out there and launched as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. We kind of got lucky because it ended up working out not too badly, because we had kind of a list of people who wanted to use it. And when we did our launch announcement, we had a lot of people sign up and become paying customers. And I don't know how many of those would have happened if the product was a little bit buggy and maybe not as polished or as fully featured. But so we, like, in some ways it was successful to, like, put in the effort to make it really polished, but I think it would have been even more successful, and we would have learned things sooner if we had launched it, sooner, without laboring over all the small details first.
And we're going to leave it there for now, but next week, Kyle gets into all the juicy numbers. How many people signed up at launch? How many people does he have using the product now? And what is he hoping for in terms of growth in the future? Please thank our sponsors, Sprintly on Twitter at Sprintly. You can follow us on Twitter as well at Product People TV. And if you could give us a rating in iTunes, we would love you forever. Just search for Product People and click that 5-star rating. Really helps the show get noticed. See you next time. Podcast hosting is provided by Transistor.fm. They host our MP3 files, generate our RSS feed, provide us with analytics, and help us distribute the show to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. If you want to start your own podcast or you want to switch to Transistor, go to transistor.fm/Justin and get 15% off your first year.